Well, here we are, the hit era. I personally consider the hit era a bit of a mixed bag. Seasons 8 and 9 are just decent, as I watched a fair amount of them when I was a kid. Calling All Engines is just straight up bad, like, really? Season 10 is okay. Season 11 is pretty solid and is my favorite hit season. The Great Discovery is simply wonderful, and Season 12 is just trash. Need I say more? But boy oh boy, does this era have its bad episodes or what? Now, some of them are gonna be predictable, but I hate them just as much as everyone else. Anyway, let's start this grind. Kicking up the list is Top Thomas. You all know why this episode sucks major horse testicles. Why on earth would the wind communicate with Thomas? That is bullshit. The three strikes formula doesn't help either. The only remotely positive thing I could say about this episode is Spencer's appearance in this episode. It's nice to see Thomas and Spencer interact with each other for once, and we would get a similar interaction with next season's Dream On. But aside from that, this episode is utterly trash. But we're only just getting started, folks. Up next is Henry and the Wishing Tree. Now, on the one hand, I really like how they kept Henry's love for nature alive and well. But on the other hand, I cannot get past how Henry was handled in this episode. If you've seen Usual Bloke Luke or Tug's videos discussing this episode, then you know how much this one sucks. I am just baffled at the fact that Henry cannot pull coaches, even though he's seen pulling coaches since the first season, and even episodes before that, and after that. Like, what was the reasoning there? Like I said, the only thing I like about this episode is Henry's love for the forest, but the episode is still shit overall. In 8th place, we have what is in my opinion the worst episode of Season 8, Chickens to School. This is one of the most dumbest episodes I've ever seen in my life. The actions made in this episode make no sense. Why would he just unload the sheep, children, and the fucking chickens at the wrong places? And worst of all, why should Thomas be blamed for all of this for something that was completely out of his control? Say what you want about McQueen getting mad at Mater in Cars 2, but at least he learned from that and the two made up in the end. Like people have said before, the part that made Thomas so real was the humans being involved. That's why I made Maggie the main lead in some episodes of my series. The humans here, though, are just used as the engine's hands. Not literal hands, like, you know. But it's still awful to see. Easily my most hated episode of Season 8. Up next is Rhaenyra and the Dinosaur. For one, I really like the idea of a dinosaur skeleton being delivered by an engine. But that's the only positive thing I could say about this episode, because this episode is heavily dragged down by the assassination of Rhaenyra and Skarloey. I just hate how Rhaenyra just tells Skarloey that he can just hold a skeleton on his own. These two are the oldest engines on the whole island, and they're fighting over a dinosaur skeleton? Like, what? And it's not like the brass instruments used for the music in this episode is gonna help either. I could not understand why every piece of music for the Skarloey Railway episodes used brass horns. It gets so ear-grating and it really irks me. In 6th place is Thomas's frosty friend. Yep, I bet you all saw this one coming, didn't you? It's no secret why this episode is as awful as it is. Thomas's brain and idiocy, the fact that he just keeps the balloon attached to his buffers, and the dreaded 5 strikes formula. Not 3, 5. I don't have much to say other than this is a piece of literal garbage. Kicking up the top 5 is Skarloey the Brave. Again, I bet you're not surprised about this being on here. Skarloey is just so out of character in this episode. It was bad enough in the old bridge, but dear God, it's so worse here. I could not live past how Skarloey was handled. He should be the oldest engine on the whole island, not a fucking child. Absolutely abysmal, no doubt. Coming in at 4th place is Saved You. Out of all Thomas-centered episodes in the entire hit era, this is by far the absolute worst one of the whole bunch. Not just because Thomas is an absolute twat in this episode by saving, quote unquote, the engines he comes across, when in reality he didn't, but also because of the complete lack of logic that plagues all over season 12. Like this scene, Thomas moves Toby to a completely different spot away from the main line. And then we get this.
I rescued you. No, you didn't. Gordon was bringing an engineer to fix me.
Like, how on earth is Thomas in the wrong here? In the context of the story, yeah, he shouldn't have done this. But isn't Toby, like, safe? So that an ongoing train doesn't hit him? You're just gonna completely throw away all logic, aren't you, Hit? If anything, it's neat that Doc, Donald, and Douglas got to appear in this episode, I guess, but that's not enough to save this horrible episode. All in all, this episode sucks ass, but it is nothing compared to what's coming up. Up next is Don't Be Silly Billy. It's no secret that I absolutely despise Billy as a character. It's so ironic that my least favorite character and God's least favorite character are associated with the color orange. I love Meggy as much as the next person, but I can't understand why people like Gauntlet hate her. I cannot say the same for Billy. Not only is he such an asshole, but he constantly says to Thomas that he is a bossy engine when he's trying to help him out. And once again, the 5 strikes formula returns, and it is even worse here. Just barely missing out on the top spot is Edward Strikes Out. What in the world did they even do to Edward in this episode? Do you wanna know why I don't mind Edward leaving the Steam Team in season 21? This episode is one of the many reasons why. Don't get me wrong, I really like Rocky, and I think he's a neat looking grain, but why would Edward, of all characters, listen to Gordon? The one that completely made rude remarks of him in the past. That not only spells inconsistency, but a sign of terrible writing. Absolute dog shit. But to no one's shock, my most hated episode of the hit era goes to Push Me, Pull You from season 12. It's no secret that season 12 is my least favorite season of the show. And that all comes down to how abysmally Rhaenyra and Scarlowe were handled. If you thought that Rhaenyra and the Dinosaur and Scarlowe the Brave portrayed these two bad enough, then holy mother of Titan, what were they fucking thinking with this one? Like, what part of this godforsaken puppet show train is heavy? And that's not even the worst of it. Rhaenyra and Scarlowe decide to play tug of war with this puppet show train. Oh my god! What went wrong? Oh wait, a lot of things. I am so glad this was the last time we saw Scarlowe and Rhaenyra act like this. As when the narrow gauge engines were brought back for Blue Mountain Mystery, they fixed them big time. Hell, Scarlowe even yells at Thomas at one point.
What did you do?
Honestly, after seeing how these two were handled for 4 seasons straight, this was a breath of fresh air. But Push Me Pull You handled these two at their absolute worst. Easily my least favorite episode of season 12 and the whole hit era. But not the worst of the show. That is coming. But as bad as all those episodes I just listed are, they are nothing compared to the utter garbage we have next. Brace yourselves, folks.